Hello, welcome back to my channel. In today's tutorial, we will be drawing a cat in Procreate. So all you'll need are the brushes in the description below, as well as the color palette, which you can also find in the description. So we're going to start off by using my fine tip pen, and you can go ahead and use one of the pens in the inking brushes if you prefer. Just wanted to give you an alternative there, but I'm going to be using my portrait starter pack and using the fine tip pen to draw a line down the middle of the page. This will be our outline layer. And I'm just going to clean that up there. So we're going to draw a oval just at the top portion of the page. So we're going to hold our pen just to make it perfect. We want the line to be somewhere close to the middle of the oval. Does not need to be perfect though. I find that sometimes it looks better when it's not actually right dead in the center. We're going to draw another oval around the same size, overlapping the previous oval we made. We're going to hold again. It's going to look something like this. And now we're going to draw an oval about twice the size beneath as well, and also creating that overlap. So the most important thing I want you to kind of recognize here is, we have our first oval at top, we have the same sized oval below, it's kind of slightly propped to the left. We're doubling the third oval size and having it kind of almost slightly to the right, and we're just going to pay attention to the actual space in between the overlap, because that's going to help you kind of figure out how to position the cat's body. So just pay mind to that part. We're going to draw our biggest oval yet, which is going to be the base of the cat's body. Again, hold and allow that to be a perfect oval. And then we're going to draw a line kind of diagonally meeting at the edges of the overlap there. And we're going to draw a open triangle. So it's not going to be closed at the end. It's going to be open. And just drawing those lines down, that's going to replicate where the legs are going to go, or it's front legs. So just pay mind to having a line go through. I found that to be a little bit easier. And now we're going to draw an elongated oval on the right hand side, and that is going to replicate or represent where the tail is going to go, and then two little ovals at the bottom, and that will be its feet or its paws, whatever you want to call them. Toe beans, everybody's got a different name for their cat's feet. But we will now just draw the ears. Alrighty, so the next thing that I'm going to do is actually just erase some of these lines just so I can see what I'm doing. I didn't separate these on different layers, which I could have done, but I'm just going to erase these for now just so I can see a little bit better. Now once I'm done erasing some of these unnecessary lines, I'm going to take my fine tip pen and still trace around some of these circles. So some of them are going to stay put, and then I'm going to draw lines outside and inside some of these lines. So you'll pay attention here to where these lines are going to go. So in the bottom part, it's going to go on the inside, and then the rest really is going to be on the outside. So next we're going to draw a cross kind of in the middle of the cat's face, and it's going to help us determine where its facial features will go. So we'll want to sketch the nose at the bottom of the top of the first overlap. And we're going to have its mouth kind of pulled down into the bottom part of the overlap as well. So it'll sit in that overlap section. And then its eyes, what we want to do is kind of create an almond shape like we would with humans, but they're going to be tilted down a little bit more. And we're going to be pulling them up and kind of creating, just like a diagonal almond is like the best way I feel like I could describe it. And you want the line to be going through the center of it in some capacity. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect. And now I'm just drawing some scribbles around the face just to make some markers as to where I'm going to be differentiating the colors of the face. So the cat, and then the line down the middle of the eye is going to be the cat's pupil. So next we're going to create another layer, bring that underneath our outline layer. I'm going to go to our hard round brush in the portrait starter pack. You can also use an alternative using an airbrush as well if you prefer. But going to go in with this kind of like beigey color from our palette. So it's the fifth one in on the second row. And we're going to increase our brush size to just about over half full opacity, and we're just going to outline the cat. I like to go around the edges with a decent sized brush, and then we're going to color fill it. So next, I'm just going to go ahead and erase some of these additional lines as well that we don't need. So I'm going to keep the triangle, like I go back here, because we want to still understand where the legs are going to go. We're going to build those out through coloring them in, essentially, but we can erase some of these. I'll keep some of the facial features, of course, just for later. But yeah, you can erase any unnecessary lines. So keep the legs intact and keep the face intact. So with a soft airbrush, what I'm going to do is go around the cat's body with a smudge tool as the soft airbrush and just blend out the lines of the cat like around. One thing about realism is nothing really has hard lines, like very few things. So the more realistic you want it to look, the more you need to blur out specific lines, or pretty much all lines, I should say, in some way. So go around and blur this out, and I like doing it this way because using the Gaussian blur, one of the other blurs in the adjustments, I find you don't have as much control over it. So I like having more control over what's being blurred and what's not in this case. So if I need to apply more pressure to specific areas and whatnot there, I just like using this a bit better. So next in the portrait starter pack, we're going to be take our base hair and we're going to be bringing it to be, I don't know, like 70%, 80% brush size, full opacity. We want to take a bit of a darker brown still. And we're going to start kind of carving out the cat's like fur pattern. So take this like kind of medium to dark brown color, and we're going to start carving out the face. So we're going to go down nice little like kind of slick brush strokes. That's what I like to do, and it doesn't actually matter too much. At one point I know I go in and kind of make it look a little bit messy, but we're going to be blending it all out. It's really just to put color down using the brush that is still going to allow us to replicate hair. So going around its face, you'll notice where I put down color for this, so just pay attention to that as we go through building out the base of our first layer of fur. All right, taking a shade a bit darker and going over and doing kind of the same thing here. So gonna warm this up a little bit by changing the color slightly on our palette, and then we're just going to be adding this on top of some of these areas here. So we are going to make quite a few different layers for the fur. Alrighty, so next we're going to be taking a dark browny gray color and we're going to be filling in the paws. So I take the hard round brush. We've already alpha locked the cat, so it's fine to go ahead and just color freely. And we're just going to build out essentially where the paws are going to go. They are going to be this color as the base, and then we're going to carve out you know, the legs a little bit more when we add more fur to it. Going back to the base hair brush, we're going to choose a light color and we're just going to add some off-white color to the top part of the face, just underneath the ears and in the selected areas. All right, so now we're going to take our smudge tool. We're going to increase the size. You can play around with the size. We do want to have it on a pretty high opacity though, and we're just going to be stroking the brush back and forth. So the big thing with hair is, or fur, is you just want to make sure you're blending it in the direction you want it to go, and the strokes that you're making should be directly correlated with the length of the hair. So if it's short hair, you're going to be doing very short little back and forth strokes. Long hair should be the opposite of that. Okay, so next, what we're going to do is we're going to go down to our strand hairbrush, or just the one that's below our base hairline. We're going to choose a white, and we are going to create a new layer. It's going to be our clipping mask layer. So clipping mask on top of the original body cat layer there. We're going to start adding in some highlights to the cat's fur. So reason we do clipping mask is it acts as a new layer, but it obeys the rules essentially of the parent layer, which is essentially the cat body that we've already created, and that just allows us to stay within the lines, and it helps with non-destructive work because it is going to be on a separate layer, so we can blend and manipulate this layer as if it's a different one still as well. So I find that creating additional layers when you're creating fur is super helpful, just because you need to be layering quite a bit, and that's why this tutorial is probably so long. But going over with light, then dark, then light, it is what's going to give it that most realistic look. Alright, so after we lay down some of this fur, of course you know the drill, we're going to blend with the same brush and going to blend this hair out. So we don't want to see any hard lines within the fur, we want it all to be looking blended. Alrighty, so same idea. We're going to go over to our outline layer first and remove any lines that we don't need, just so that we can see everything much better. After that, we can click on our new layer that we can create for the fur there. So if we go in and actually create a new layer, perfect, it's going to be another clipping mask layer. We're going to go back to the base hair tool in our portrait starter pack. Sorry, I feel like I'm coming down with a cold or something. My brain's not working as fast as I would like it, so apologies. But we're just going to add in some dark lines, and they're going to be really small, like almost little like raindrops in terms of just like at their size, but just creating that in there. And we want it to be sitting underneath the white fur layer that we had created a bit earlier, just because we want these to almost act as like little pockets of dark fur that are kind of peeking through from underneath the tips of the fur, if that makes sense. So we go in and we're going to add in some of this. It really adds in depth to the fur itself. And of course, we go in and blend it afterwards. All right, we're going to do the same thing, another clipping mask layer. It's going to sit underneath the white layer, but it's also going to sit below the white layer, and then it's going to sit above the other layers we've already created. So this is just going to be a bit more of like a texture layer, still to add a little bit more light, but we want it to sit underneath or act, sorry, as a different layer still. So just pay attention to where I'm kind of creating some of these strokes and just adding in a little bit more depth. Okay, gonna go back to the light haired layer. We're just gonna add to that a little bit. Still using either one of our hair tools will work. It's going to just be very light-handed, just adding in a little bit more like depth into the chest area because that's where the hair is the shortest. Just going back to layer 5 just to blend out some of the strokes that we made on that layer. Sometimes you'll notice some of them peeking through and you didn't blend them properly, so you just need to navigate back to that layer and make sure you're blending it out so it doesn't look strange. Okay, next we're going to create a new layer. It's going to sit on top of layer 3. Make sure it's clipping mask. We're going to choose this medium toned brown and we're going to pull it over slightly to warm it up a bit. We're using our base hair brush, currently halfway sized, full opacity, and we're going to start adding in some fur to the legs. And so I go through this process of creating almost space between each of the strokes I'm doing. If you can see, it's almost like horizontal lines of this fur color, and this is just representing, or it's just going to be a really good technique to show some of the fur in terms of how it would be sitting on the cat's arms. Then going in with a gray color. And really what we're doing here on the legs is because this cat's legs are actually quite dark. The best way to add texture or dimension to that is by using light reflection. So that's really what this is here, is the fur's light reflection is happening there. So we go in, add this color, and of course go in and blend it out afterwards. All right, next, let's create another layer. And now we're going to choose, let's choose this kind of brown color just to add a little bit more depth to the arms. Again, we can use our base. We'll go down and actually use the shorter haired strand brush. And this one's good for a little bit more detailing work because the lines between the hair strokes are a bit further apart. And then the base hair is much better for color filling. Okay, so now you can go back to one of the previous layers that you had made to draw fur on the legs. So in this case, mine is layer 8. And so I just go in and I use layer 8, which is where I added a lot of that fur on the legs, like I said. But if we want to choose a bit more of like a brown color, this is going to show reflection using just our strand hairbrush. So just going in and kind of creating some areas where light reflection would be showing to hit the toes on the cat. So we'll add a couple different colors for dimension here as well. And we of course go in and blend it too using the same brush. Okay, and so next for the base, we're going to the base cat layer, so the original one we made there. Using our base hairbrush, we are going to start adding darkness to the tummy, so in between the legs there. So I'm taking a dark gray, almost black color. So I go in and adjust it slightly. And you can have your brush at about halfway, full opacity. Actually, let's bring that up a bit more. You can play around with it, whatever feels right, honestly, because you're just filling this in. So just going to do some upward strokes there. So taking that same brush, we're going to be, and color, we're going to be adding a little bit more to the base of the body, where the body meets the tail in this drawing. And then we'll go ahead and blend it out as well. All right, so next we're going to focus on the tail. So we're going to take this color, just color selected it there by pressing and holding my finger. Going to create a new layer, and it can be sitting towards the bottom. We are going to take our strand brush, and we are going to go in and start to just build out some layers on the tail, so it can be a little less than, or a little bit above half opacity, around just about over half, about 60% size. As you can see, I actually decrease that and increase the opacity as well, so just to play around with that a little bit more. So we're going to go down to our strand hairbrush. We're just using the base hair, sorry. So this is just going to give it a little bit more texture, because again, it's a little bit more sparse in between the lines rather than having it so thick. And almost like a raccoon tail, we're just going to kind of create a bit of a pattern of stripes. So I start with going in with this color, but then to the black portion, I actually take a bit of a blue just to show a bit more of reflection on the fur. Alright, so this will be probably the funnest part about the drawing is drawing the cat's face. So we'll start off with a black using our hard round brush in our portrait starter pack, and we're going to start filling in some black to the middle of the face and use those scribble marks on the cheeks and forehead as where we want to stop that and start blending. So we'll go in through using mainly 3 brushes, so the color fill being the hard round brush here, and then we're going to go in and use the base hair as well as the strands as well, and use that to apply color and blend color on the face. I also want to mention that the layer you're doing this on can be the body layer, so like the original layer that we created for the cat, or you can create a new one on top of all of the layers that we've already created. There isn't really too much of a difference here just for this black part. Alright, going to navigate over to the base hair brush, and we're going to start pulling it in around the eyes. Now using the same brush, we're going to click and hold our smudge tool brush, and we're going to start blending some of this out. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to go back to the outline layer. We're going to erase any additional scribbles that we have left on the face so we can see everything a little bit better. Keep the eyes intact, keep the nose, and keep the bottom of the mouth as well. And so we're going to go back to the original layer we were working off of, choose the smudge brush again, and just make sure you're blending all of this out, including the sides of the cheeks as well. So next I choose this brown color, and I like to make it a little bit warmer because I found that it looks nice to have like a little bit more of that kind of tan brown and not have all cool colors on the fur. So we're just going to be adding a little bit of detail and having some brown kind of where the black is meeting the lighter part of the fur, and then it can kind of seamlessly blend into the lighter part, so it'll be the middle color in between. So what you can notice are some of those lines on the original, fur that we were trying to create on layer 5 in this case. I'm just going back to blend it. So if you see any hard lines on some of the fur layers that you've created, go back in and blend some of those out just because they do look a little wacky or just unnatural. So going back in to blur those out so I can continue with the rest of the drawing. After making some adjustments and moving some of those lines from underneath there and blending some of it out, going back to the base body layer where we have the black on the face, and we're just going to start blending some of this out again. All right, so just kind of rounding out the nose a little bit, making sure it's a bit more flat at the top. And we are now going to choose a dark blue color. So it'll be the first square on the third row of our palette. And we're going to be using that hairbrush or even a soft round brush. I go in between the two for shading in the face, but because the face is black, we want to be able to still give it definition. So we're using some dark blue to shade out parts of the cat's face and shape it out. All right, taking a soft blend brush, I'm going to take this gray color and just add a little bit of this color to the tip of the nose. Going back in with the hair strands brush just to add a little bit more depth in certain areas. So just pay attention to where I'm adding those. We are going to go back in and blend out all of these lumpy areas that you see with the strands brush and the hair base brush. So I like the hair strands brush for using it on fine details on the face, because the face is a little bit more, there's more going on, I think, and so it's good for having some detail. So we're just going to press and hold our smudge brush to pull over the hair strands brush to blend with that. Okay, gonna color select this brown color, and then we're just going to fill in the bottom of the mouth. Then we're going to go ahead and erase those lines over top so we can see if there's anything looking strange or out of place there. So let's go back. So we did that on the main base layer. Going back to that same layer and just filling in any gaps that we see there. So going in with a fine tip pen, it's just going to make it a little bit easier to get this precise. Perfect, no gaps. All right, so this is what we have so far. Nice. And so now just going to use the soft blend brush to blend this out a little bit so we don't have any weird looking hard lines around the bottom of the mouth. Creating another layer at the bottom there. So we're going to actually just pull it up to the top under our layer 10. And we are going to choose a, we're going to go with our base hair, but we're going to choose a color that's slightly darker than what we chose as the base color of the chin or bottom of the mouth. And we're just going to make these small little strokes of hair over top. The reason I did this on another layer is so that I could blend this out without messing up the other parts of the face. So we're going to go in with a darker color too, around the edge of the mouth, like so, to almost create these lifelike like hair strokes around that area. Because there isn't a ton of surface area for us to blend, it makes sense for us to put like the hair details on a separate layer. All right, now it's time to choose a dark gray color and go in with our fill brush or a hard round brush, and we're just going to fill in the nose. Then with an even darker color, after we blend this out here a little bit, so I'm going to go with the soft blend brush and just blend out any of the hard lines around the nose. We're going to go in with a darker color and kind of carve out some details of the nose. Going back to the base layer, we are going to choose a brown color. I think it's the 5th one in on the top row. And from there, we are going to fill in the ears. From there, I'm going to take an even darker color and we're just going to add a little bit more depth to the ears by shading parts of it. So you can just use the soft round brush for this portion. And then, yeah, we're just going to go in and blend this out as well. Just in the interest of adding a little bit more depth, we go in with a bit of a darker color to blend out afterwards as well. We're going to finish off with adding more like hair to the ears, just to add that more realistic effect at the end. Oh great, going to create a new layer. We're going to color select this brown layer, and essentially what this layer's purpose is going to serve, we're going to go to the strands, is just to create some hair over the ears, like so. So some nice, just easy swoops over the ears. Play around with the colors here as well. We want to maybe make this a little bit darker, just so we can actually see the strands a bit better. We'll also add in some lighter color ones as well. And then of course just going in with our same brush as the smudge brush and just blending out some of those areas where you see the lines start. Alright, so going back to our fur layer that had the lightest color on it, so I believe that was layer 3. So you'll notice like a lot of buildup that we have around the ears because we added that earlier. So we just want to make sure we're going in between the base layer and that light fur layer and just blending this out because we don't want the ears to actually look like this. So we'll go in with the hair strands brush and do a back and forth motion until we see it's blended the way that we want. And you'll notice some lumping of coloring, so that's because it's actually on a different layer, and we'll need to do the same thing on that one too, which is our base layer. So I just go back with the hard round brush on our base layer, taking the alpha lock off there, just because I noticed that the ears were looking a little bit different. So I just wanted to increase the length of the one on the right here. So don't mind me just making this fine-tuned adjustment here. Okay, next we're going to create a new layer just above where we have our nose and mouth are. So what we want to do here is we're going to use our fine tip pen to draw an outline around the cat's eyes, because cats do naturally have a little bit of like eyeliner, and it is a bit more of a hard line around the eyes. So it definitely helps us be able to build this out, and then we can also erase the original, drawing of this eye or the outline afterwards. So we'll have the outline of the cat's eye on one layer, and then next we're going to want to choose a blue color because we're going to start to fill in the eye. However, we do want to create a new layer for this, so it'll sit underneath our eye outline layer, but it will be separate so that we can alpha lock it and shade the eye afterwards. Going back to our eye outline layer, we're going to be doing the exact same thing on the other side. So now what I do is I make sure I'm using the fine tip pen as the smudge brush, and I'm going in with the outline layer, and I'm just using the smudge brush to smooth out the outer lines of the outline here. And I go in and I use the same pen again to define them a bit better, but you just don't want them to be looking wonky or scribble like how they are right now. You want them to be looking pretty smooth. Okay, now we're gonna go to the actual color of the cat's eye. And we can go in with a soft blend. So we're gonna alpha lock the eye, and we're gonna go in with this dark blue just to create a bit more shadow around the pupil and around the top of the eye. Now going in with a light blue color, or more of like, let's actually choose a kind of mid-tone blue color that has a bit more pop of color. So I'm going to bring it over to the right a little bit on this grid and just add a little bit in certain areas just to make the eyes pop a little bit more. All right, and then next what we're going to do is choose an actual light blue color. It's going to be almost like an off-white, and we're going to reduce our brush size and just go in underneath at the bottom of the eye there and start shading in a little bit to kind of create like a crescent shape, but at the bottom just hugging the bottom of the eye. And we'll of course go in and blend that out afterwards as well. Okay, go back to your eye layer. We're going to create a new layer on top of that. And we're going to go down to the base hair layer, or brush I should say. And this is going to be like a reflection layer over the eye. So what I realized I'd done is created a layer that we actually want to be above the eye liner or eye outline layer. So I'm going to go to the blending brush pack and choose my favorite. That brush size is way too big. I'm going to dilute that a bit, bring the opacity to half, and just going to draw these little lines over top of the eye. And I'm going to make this a bit more of a pure white, bring up the opacity a little bit. And what we can do afterwards is blend this out and then erase some of it to create some harder lines as well. It helps create reflection in eyes, which is a good realism technique. So just going to hold my smudge brush in place, bring down the size of that, and pull it in a few different directions here. So going back to using a fine tip pen, I'm using Inktober in my blending brush pack. But if we go back to the outline layer and create a new layer just for the light reflection of the eye, we can bring this up full opacity, bring down the brush size, make sure we're using a pure white, and then just create a little dot there off of the side of the pupil. And there you go. Alright, one of the last steps here is just drawing out the whiskers. So we'll go ahead and create a new layer for that as well. And we're just going to be using Inktober. We're going to be using the brush size to be about half, if not a little bit less than that. And make sure it's on full opacity as well. You can bring down the opacity to create a little bit more depth actually between the different whiskers. So just like long strokes, like you're almost just like pulling away. And the base of the whisker isn't too important right now because we will be blending that out as well. But having some pointing down, some pointing out, and we'll do the same to the other side, and then we will also be adding some eyebrows in the same way as well. Going in with my blending brush as the smudge brush here from my blending brush pack, we're just going to blend out the bottoms or the base of where the hair is coming out of the cat. So we're going to create a new layer and we want it to be, I guess you could say, underneath the layer that we put hair on the chin. So in this case, we are going to just be adding a bit of a light halo around the cat's mouth. So we want it to be sitting underneath the whiskers. We want it to be sitting underneath the hair that we drew on the chin, which we put on a separate layer, but we want it to be above our base layer. And this is just giving a little bit more definition to that part of the cat. This is an optional step. If you like it without, that's totally fine. But now I'm going to go in and blend this out a little bit as well. All right, this is looking pretty good so far. We're going to go back to the base layer and make sure we're taking alpha lock off of the cat if it's on. We're going to use our base hair, and we are going to brush out the edges of the cat. So I know we blurred these or blurred the outline of the cat earlier, just like the base of the cat, but we do want to make it look like hair is coming off of it and it's not so sharp looking on the edges. So we'll just go around the entire cat and make sure we're doing that. Okay, last but not least, we're going to create another layer. It's going to sit underneath the base layer, and this is just going to be a shadow just to give it a little bit less of a flat look on the canvas. So I'm just going to be choosing a dark color. Black is good, or an off black, aka a dark gray or something like that. And you can just use the blending brush that I use in my blending brush pack, and we can just start to create a bit of a shadow on the left side of the cat, and just like a little bit under his paws and a little bit under the tail. Not a whole lot though, just because the reflection is going to be mainly on the left side, and then we'll go ahead and blend that out with the same brush. Well, thank you so much for watching this tutorial. Hopefully you learned something new and you enjoyed it. If you did, in fact, like this tutorial and want to see more, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button for more tutorials like this. I'll see you guys here next week. Bye.